Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution. And for today, we have one of the hottest vendor, I would say, in the supply chain space. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my quick intro. Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Andy for his intro.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Sam. My name is Andy Pratico. I've been involved in ERP software for manufacturing companies for all my life, and I worked all over North America. And I also teach people how to uncover the truth about ERP systems before they buy. And I have a published book on Amazon on the topic. And thank you so much, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And we will start with our briefing. But if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them during the show. If we run out of time, we'll make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, Andy, I am going to start with the quick briefing. And I know we have covered a lot of different layers. This one is very, very unique. And there are going to be some concepts that we are going to talk about today. I think in this one, I don't know if you have followed every one of them that we have reviewed so far, to be completely honest. But this one is probably going to bring everything together, where everybody sort of plays. They have one extremely fancy infographic to describe. In fact, I mean, even personally for me, I guess this has been a journey. I don't know if I had complete grasp, even though I sort of knew where everybody sort of fits, but I didn't understand.
Come on, Sam, you know everything.
No.
Yes, you do.
That is not true at all. I'm learning as you are learning, Andy, as part of these sessions. And that's the beauty of these sessions, right?
That's for
so
sure.
Today you are going to know a lot, and this is going to be a good discovery overall. So, Andy, I don't know whether you remember this or not. I think last week we coined one term called independent from the perspective of supply chain, which is a very interesting topic. Yes, we talk about independence in the ERP industry, but from the supply chain perspective, the independent matters because the technology platforms that are not going to be affiliated with the managed services companies or the supply chain consulting companies, okay, those are the ones that are going to be independent. So that is one of the layers that we have discovered last time, and that term is being used officially. So, which is a great thing, because that's how you sort of evaluate. Sometimes these companies are going to claim that they have TMS system, but the TMS system might not necessarily be independent. So you need to pay attention to the term as well as where everybody sort of fits. Now, the other layers and three layers that you are going to notice, Andy, in this conversation, number one is going to be planning. Okay. Number two is the execution.
So
and number three,
logistics planning?
Sorry, what's it?
Is that logistics planning?
So we will talk about that as well. By the way, now today, Andy, I know that you talk all the time about ERP, but I don't know how many people really understand ERP. So we are going to coin a new understanding for ERP. Okay. So, and I don't know whether you agree with this or not. Obviously, you can challenge me if you like, but let's talk about those three layers that we were talking about. So we are talking about planning. Number two, execution. Number three is network. Planning, execution, network. Okay. Now, when you look at the WMS layer or TMS layer, I think they have done a wonderful job in segmenting the capabilities. So let's say if you look at the WMS space, and I don't know, Andy, whether you remember if I recall correctly, I think this was when we had reviewed Logiva. Okay, so in the case of Logiva, they had segmented their capabilities into 3 buckets. Number 1 was WMS. Number 2 was WES, which is your warehouse execution system. WMS is warehouse management system. And number 3 was WCS, which is warehouse control system. Okay, the way they segment this is management is more management aspect, meaning managerial layer, the way managers are going to think in the physical world. Okay, execution is execution, meaning you are literally running, you are okay. The control is that robotic arm from the warehouse perspective. Now this concept exists in the case of, let's say, if you talk about MES. Okay, MES, they had always said that, you know what, MES is the execution system, it's the manufacturing execution system. I don't know if they have something called manufacturing planning system or not, but they had always referred to them as manufacturing execution system. This concept exists in the TMS space as well, and that's how they are segmenting their capabilities into 3. Okay, in the case of supply chain. So supply chain, you have the supply chain execution, and then you have the supply chain planning. Now, the funny part with the ERP world is the way ERP, the way people have always positioned ERP as enterprise resource planning. Do you agree with me, Andy?
That's
And
what
you
the
have
acronym stands for. Yep.
so technically, when you say enterprise resource planning, technically ERP is supposed to be doing planning, right? Because that's what is the name. But ERP has always meant to be more of the execution component. Okay, if you look at this from the right lenses, ERP, the whole idea of ERP was execution. Can it do planning? Sure, it can do planning, but it's the role of it is not necessarily planning. You have far more specialized systems that can do far superior planning, because for planning you are probably going to require external data sets. In fact, the whole supply chain space grew because of the planning component. Before, they didn't really have the execution component, to be completely honest. The whole idea of supply chain system was that they needed supply chain data, and ERP systems did not have enough data to be able to support their planning cycles. So that's why you needed a system. So overall, I think supply chain space has done a wonderful job in segmenting, what is execution, what is planning, and what is network, which is far more powerful, because network drives everything. Network drives data, data drives planning, the whole AI thing. AI is not as meaningful, in the ERP space, because when you are simply executing, you don't need as much AI. You need far more AI when you are going to be forecasting, planning, when you don't have those data sets available. So overall, I guess the point I'm trying to make, Andy, here is, so these guys have done a wonderful job in segmenting that, and you are going to see very clearly the way they are trying to position their capabilities. So there are not very many systems in the market that have all 3 of these, which is going to be your execution, network, and planning. This is the only system that has all 3. But this is only from the supply chain perspective. This is not supposed to be more from the ERP perspective. So that's a key distinction that we are going to talk a lot about today. And I think that's a great distinction. If you start thinking from this lenses, everything will start making sense, why these systems exist and why they have a place, in the architecture where you are going to be needing each of these technologies. Now, overall, in terms of briefing, I guess, Andy, the other layers that we touch is overall the suite concept. And from the supply chain perspective, and the whole idea of ERP is a suite as well, to be completely honest. Okay, I don't know how many people really understand what suite means, but you are buying these systems as part of suite, as opposed to buying them independently. So here, when we talk about supply chain suite, so we have seen a lot of different layers. So WMS, TMS, OMS, SNOP, these are all buckets and the components of that suite from the supply chain perspective. ERP is going to have its own sort of perspective, but the suite aspect is very important. And in this particular suite, you are going to find pretty much everything that you found, plus network, which has been missing so far with most of the systems that we have reviewed. So this is probably the first system that is going to have the largest network ever created.
Tell me what you mean by network, Sam.
So network, and I don't know, Andy, how much understanding you have about systems such as GT Nexus, right? So what GT Nexus does is that the real power of GT Nexus is because of that network. Okay, so the way network works is, so let's say if you are a manufacturer, right, Andy? So manufacturer is going to be working with a lot of different suppliers. So you have your own suppliers, but you are going to be shopping around for suppliers. So if you combine all of these suppliers, not only from the manufacturing perspective, but also from the transportation perspective, that's where you get the real data as well as the supply chain visibility, because you need to understand, okay, where your shipment is going from one hub to the next, to be able to have that control tower capabilities, to be able to have that visibility. So the network is the whole supply chain that is going to be part of the network. Not many companies have that. Some people are utilizing data from companies like e2open, and that's how they are getting the network. Okay, so the network is going to be number one, the carrier network. And we have seen this in the case of, let's say, if you look at CH Robinson, they have their own network. They have pretty much everybody in their ecosystem, right? So that's their proprietary network. But e2open is an open network. Okay, it's almost like, I don't know whether you want to, I don't want to compare this with EDI network. For example, let's say if you look at any of the EDI vendors, they have their own network as well, because they're connecting it with everybody. They are talking with everybody. If you compare, let's say, Ariba, Coupa, they have their own network. So not only you can work with your own supplier, but you can source new suppliers. It's almost like a marketplace, right? So the network is going to be number one, the network of every single supplier and manufacturer that are going to be part of their ecosystem. So not only sometimes you might do business with them, but you get the visibility in your supply chain. And that's where the real power of supply chain is. That's what companies are looking for, because that's something that they don't have. Okay, they understand, what is happening inside their facility, but as soon as the shipment goes out of the facility, they have no clue how to plan that. So that's where the real power of network is. If I don't know if I'm making sense here.
No, completely. It makes total sense.
Okay, so that network is what is driving the data. The data is driving AI.
Supply chain network is what you're talking about.
It's the external supply chain network, where every single player that is going to be part of supply chain is part of that network. Right. Now, every single partner or player is probably not going to be part of network, but I mean, the more you are going to get, the more power you get in your network, right? So sometimes you get the real company that is going to be part of your network. Sometimes you simply get data, and both of them are equally beneficial, because once you have somebody in your network, you have their data as well, depending upon how the relationship is set up. But for the most part, you will definitely have at least access to data. And sometimes these guys have access to data. Sometimes they have, as part of their network. Now, the other question that you are going to have is e2open. The reason why it is called e2open, because e2open is an open network. Okay. And the way open and closed networks work is, so for example, let's say, Andy, I'm the manufacturer, or you are the manufacturer. Okay. And I need to communicate with my supplier. What are my options? I'm probably going to hire somebody like EDI vendor. That's how I'm going to be communicating, right? Let's say if I need to send I have my ERP system, my supplier has their own ERP system. Now these ERP systems need to connect. How do you talk? Okay, you are going to have either EDI, you are going to create some sort of portal, and that's how you are going to talk, right? Now, let's say if you don't want to do that. So some of these systems, what they have done is, since you both are already part of the network, so you simply need to flip the switch. As soon as you flip the switch, then you are sort of connected. So you don't have to do any additional work. And that's how most of the, let's say, if you look at any of these shipping carriers, they have a lot of carriers as part of their platform. So they simply flip the switch. So for example, let's say if I'm the manufacturer or distributor, I need to talk to Costco, Walmart. I have, let's say, 300 different customers. The only thing I need to do is the trading partner setup. As soon as I do my trading partner setup, they are not literally trying to integrate with the API that, okay, now you exchange sales order, now you exchange purchase order, now you exchange invoice. That could take forever, when you are going to be integrating. So these guys had already pre-built template as part of EDI. So some of them did that, and because of that, they got network visibility, control tower capability. But overall, the network is extremely, extremely powerful. And that's the whole intent of E2open. E2open is the open network, and we'll be talking more about that. Any more questions, or shall we move to the slides?
No, that's wonderful. Thank you, Sam.
Of course. So here, in this particular case, E2open is the connected supply chain software platform that enables the world's largest companies to transform the way they make, blah, blah, blah. But the cloud-native global platform purpose-built for modern supply chains. E2open connects more than 400,000 manufacturing, logistics, channel, and distribution partners as one multi-enterprise network tracking over 13 billion transactions annually. This is happening inside one system, Andy. Can you believe that? The power of that?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is, right? So the amount of data that pretty much everything that is happening in the world, I guess. You can help people plan their supply chain based on this data. That's the power of the network. Okay. Typically, ERP vendors, for the most part, or the technology vendors, they are going to rely on your data. They don't have their own data that you can use to plan. So that's where the real difference is between execution and planning. Okay, when you need to plan, you need data, and to get data, you need network. So this is where E2open is really, really powerful, and that's why private equity is pouring money in this. Connected supply chain with the network of over 400,000 manufacturers. So we have already covered that point. So this one is the acquisition. I think they have done a lot of different acquisition. By the way, Andy, the way these companies started, generally they were good at just one data set. Okay, so for example, let's say if you look at supply chain is segmented between different modes. So for example, you have your truck transportation, you have your ocean, you have your rail, you have your air. And typically the data gathering for each of those modes are going to be very different. You need to sign very different licenses. You need to have different authorization before you can get access to data. So for the most part, traditionally companies had just one data set, partial data set. They did not have access to everything, right? So lately what private equity, what they have done is they have acquired all of these pieces. Okay, and that's how E2open became really big. So in this deal is the BluJay deal, and BluJay was really good as well. By the way, they were valued at like $2 billion, right? So they acquired this company, and that's how E2open became so big, because they acquired so many different companies. Okay, now this particular commentary, BluJay's, so this is the commentary about BluJay's itself. It's a network of 50,000 capacity partners and serves more than 5,700 global customers, including 20 of the top 25 logistics service providers. And typically LSPs are going to have their own networks as well, because they are serving a lot of different logistics companies. So I think this is more of the, I think it reads that this was more of the D2C offering globally, including over the road trucking last mile parcel. So this acquisition is around COVID. And during COVID, I think everybody tried to acquire some sort of parcel capabilities that not bigger platforms had. So BluJay was focused on that, I guess. And by the way, the regions are going to have different capabilities as well. For example, if you have network of European companies, that may be a very different network than what you are going to have in the US. So Europe data that you're going to have is going to be very different as well. So data is segmented between different modes, but it is also segmented based on different regions. Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it on this one. So now these are different buckets for E2net, and obviously the partner network is what is enabling all of this. So obviously the concept that we were talking about, independent versus non-independent. So this one is primarily the open network. And open network, when you have, and I don't know how the relationship for e2open is set up for the most part, but generally the difference between open and open and closed is going to be when you have to, let's say, recruit your own supplier, when you are trying to enable them for your network, they have to authorize that permission. Okay, so, and that is a challenge for a lot of companies. So some of these companies are going to say, you know what, I mean, you can onboard all of your suppliers and then you are going to get complete traceability inside your supply chain, ND. But sometimes that may not be possible. Let's say if your suppliers don't agree to be part of the network, then you are not going to get the visibility. Your control tower capabilities are not going to work just because you don't have enough data. Your suppliers are not agreeing. So that's a huge problem. With open network, that's not a problem in general. So that's where the open and proprietary are going to be different overall from the network perspective. Now they are taking very different approach as well. I think one of the layers that we have not seen so far, Andy, is the whole channel marketing, the MDF. From the manufacturer perspective, they need to plan their whole global trade, and there is a little marketing aspect there. Because you need to plan for your MDF, you need to plan your capacity. You are doing joint forecasting, you are doing joint development, you are doing joint marketing programs. All of that for large companies need to be planned. If you're talking about $5 million company in revenue, not a lot going on. But when you talk about $50 billion company, it's a different case. Right? So these are very, very, very large company, and they have to plan these initiatives. So here, I think they have segmented this into 5 different buckets: demand, planning, global trade, logistics, and supply, which is slightly different from the other platforms, the way they would like to define. So here, from the demand perspective, by the way, the perspective that e2open takes is going to be slightly more manufacturing perspective. So this is going to be very similar to the way your platforms like Infor Nexus is going to be positioned. So they are probably attacking similar market, because with these platforms, the perspective is really important. Whether you are talking about more from the 3PL perspective, from the transportation perspective, or are you talking more from the manufacturer perspective? So e2open, for the most part, targets automotive suppliers, because that's where your joint planning forecasting is going to be really handy. So this is a very, very, very similar market as your Infor's market, Andy, Infor, QAD, IQMS, all of these companies, just because the joint collaboration, joint forecasting is going to be super critical in these market patches. So here, the demand, they are saying manage partners, incentive programs, channel inventory, retail promotions with decision grade data. Decision grade data is super, super, super interesting concept. Even if people talk that, they can do supply chain traceability, they can do AI, but when you talk about decision grade data, you need the power of network. The only reason why e2open is going to be stronger with their forecasting, and we are talking about forecasting of ETAs, when you are going to have so many different variables, ETA of your entire supply chain. Can you believe this? We are talking about that forecasting. For that, you need a lot of data, and that's where e2open really shines. So here we are talking about managed partners, incentive programs, channel inventory, retail promotions. Now, the planning, scenario-based planning, that's very common across most of the supply chain planning platforms. I don't have anything else here. Cross-border transactions, that's a very Infor LN-centric concept, just because you have a lot of global trade included as part of that solution as well. Any of the larger ones that do any sort of global trade, that is going to be your SAP of the world, Oracles of the world, they are probably going to have global trade capabilities more from the execution perspective. The execution aspect of global trade is very different from your planning aspect. Here, we are looking at both, because these guys can do both. Okay. Any comments, Andy?
No.
Okay. So here, overall, in terms of their technology, segmentation, or the industry segmentation, if you look at, so percentage total customer count by industry. So they have technology, which is probably 12%, transportation, which is very common, especially when you look at the segmentation of any of the supply chain suite or the platform. So these are very supply chain centric industries in general. So technology, transportation, consumer, as well as industrial, that is probably 80%, right here. The main difference between this versus the other platforms that we have reviewed is, number one, they are targeting technology, and even technology has very, very complex supply chain. When you talk about, companies like Microsoft, companies like Dell, they are utilizing this to track their global supply chain. Then you have transportation, that is going to be your 3PL centric companies, trucking companies. So that's their market share. And then you have the consumer as well as industrial. Industrial is not as common, but that is definitely their target market for the most part. Consumer includes a lot of retail companies as well, which is very similar target market as your Blue Yonder, Manhattan, and typically these guys are going to be installed alongside your SAP Oracle. That's their sweet spot. So SAP Oracle are going to provide the execution component more from the ERP perspective. Sometimes they might provide the execution component more from the WMS, TMS perspective, but these guys are going to be mainly used for their planning, the supply chain traceability control tower and the network. Okay, so depending upon the architecture, I guess, companies might use both. Sometimes they are going to host everything related to supply chain in this, and then SAP Oracle, they are going to be used more as the general ledger and financial reporting software. So depending upon the architecture, depending upon the industry, depending upon the business model and transactions. The industrial includes aerospace and defense, which has a decent share, and automotive. And these are very similar industries as your Infor LN. This is also QAD does not target aerospace and defense, automotive, for the most part. So this is very Infor LN centric market where supply chain planning is going to be super heavy. Yeah. Now, if you look at their journey, how they have evolved overall, and this has happened in last 4 or 5 years, to be completely honest. Okay, so in 2016 they were more CPG demand sensing. 2015 new management team, new direction, right? 2016 CPG demand sensing, retail demand signal repositories. That's how they started. They were really into that CPG space, and then they got into sales and operations planning, indirect sales channel visibility. So they were doing that early on, I guess. And then sales channel performance, that was their sweet spot. By the way, these guys are also in the Salesforce ecosystem, because some of the things that they are going to provide, especially when you are going to have a lot of suppliers and you have very tight relationship with them in terms of doing joint marketing programs, joint channel programs, it becomes very hard to host all of this inside CRM. And that's why these guys collaborate with Salesforce a lot as well. Then you have 2018 is where they got the real execution capabilities, which is your cloud-based TMS. They also got ocean data, ocean shipping network. Before that, they didn't have that. They were primarily a planning engine. Then 2019, they got channel marketing automation. Now, how do you draw the boundary between your marketing and supply chain? Now, marketing and supply chain, they are also very tight, and they are close together, especially when you talk about the channel forecasting, channel marketing spend planning. It gets very, very, very deep, the way that planning works. And that's where, like, sales, if you look at sales and operations planning, I don't know whether that is more of a sales function or operations function. Most people are going to think that that's probably operations, but it has a lot of sales and marketing component as well.
Some people think it's 50-50.
Sorry, what's it?
Some people think it's 50-50.
Exactly. And
it's collaboration.
Yes. And if you look at more from the ERP lenses, I guess, and the ERP was always slightly more operations. I mean, some people are going to claim that they had a little bit of sales. Yeah, but I mean, it hardly had any sales, I guess. um, so that's where things are really interesting, because these guys are going deeper into that marketing planning, marketing automation, channel marketing automation. So these are new things for a lot of companies that traditionally were very trade show focused. They might not have done as deep planning, but now, because either data is available, network is available, so they are able to do these things. Then they got global trade network in 2019, 2021, global transportation management. So until 2021 they do not have that capability, and then finally they got the parcel capabilities as well. That is probably the last thing that most companies got. So this is the multi-carrier e-commerce shipping. So now they have the last mile, etc. So they have a lot of capabilities, one of the broadest capabilities that you are going to find in any supply chain solution out there. Now, this is the slide that I was talking about, and the overall planning, execution, and network. So these are different solutions that we have reviewed so far. So I don't know if you recall any of those. So we have reviewed Blue Yonder, we have reviewed Manhattan, Oracle, SAP. So they sit in between planning and execution. And the reason why they are sitting between planning and execution is because they are going to have, number one, by the way, this is all from the supply chain perspective. This is not really ERP perspective. So when they say execution, what they mean is WMS and TMS capability. That's what execution means. When they say planning, what that means is your S and OP platform. Okay, typically your Coupa and a plans of the world, O9 solutions, these are very planning centric solutions. When you look at Connexus that we have reviewed, that is also very planning centric solution. Execution is going to be your WMS, TMS, but in my mind, if I look at the execution, ERP should fall under the execution capabilities as well, because it's really designed for that. It's not designed for planning. Here they are talking about execution, all of the TMS players. So you have Transplace, which is your Uber Freight. Then you have Shipwell, CH Robinson we have reviewed, Alpiga we are going to review them as well, and 3T Logistics. Okay, now the network, there are only few players in the market that have real network. Okay, and one of them obviously is e2open. The second one is Infor. Okay, so Infor is very unique. Infor does not have the execution component from the TMS perspective. They have the network and they have the planning. And that's what, again, this is the view of GT Nexus. This is not the view of anything else that Infor has in its portfolio. But for the most part, they don't have the execution component, at least from the TMS perspective, because it's really designed from the manufacturing perspective. And when you look at the overall supply chain, you need to combine all of this. Okay, you need to combine your carrier view, you need to combine your supplier view, both of them. So, some companies have half of them because they might be part of that transportation ecosystem. Some companies are going to be part of manufacturing ecosystem, so they are going to have that supplier view, but only few companies such as e2open are going to have both of them. But they also rely on, and we are going to review this as well, okay, the other platforms that we are going to review in the future, that e2open also does not have all of the data. They are relying on some of the partners, especially they are weak in the transport data. So they are talking to some of the transport players to get that data, but they are probably going to have most data available, I guess. So now, as part of the network, you have one network, OpenText, you have Pagero, Siemens, and TrueCommerce. And Andy, I think you might recognize TrueCommerce here, I guess. Right? Okay, so I don't have anything else here. So now we have some more commentary. So obviously the way they are positioning them as really that SCM suite, and here they are talking about capabilities. So they are saying omni-channel demand sensing, supply planning, global trade management, transportation and logistics, and manufacturing and supply chain management. And we primarily generate revenue from the sale of software, subscription, and professional services. So they are really independent. They are really the tech provider. They are not part of that supply chain consulting firm, right? Then they are saying we serve approximately 6,000 clients in all major countries in the world across a wide range of end markets, including consumer goods, food and beverage manufacturing. So consumer goods is very Blue Yonder centric play. Then food and beverage, CH Robinson is going to be present there. Manufacturing, we are talking about Infor, GT Nexus, retail, Blue Yonder, Manhattan again. Technology and transportation is very unique. Technology, I guess, I don't know how many supply chain vendors have really spoken about technology. Um, and I don't know, Andy, if you remember, somebody was trying to show that they got Microsoft account. If I don't remember, I mean, they were trying to show the Microsoft supply chain in their supply chain control tower. I don't know whether that was Descartes or it was not Descartes. It's definitely not Trimble. I don't know which one is that. I forget the name. But somebody was trying to show in the ones that we have reviewed so far. So we need to go back to our own review where we have reviewed that, I guess. But technology is very interesting as well. So these guys in that technology play. And then we have the transportation, which is slightly more Trimble's play. Then they have roughly 650 large enterprise clients, report greater than $1 billion in annual revenue, and generate $15,000 or more of our annual subscription revenue. I think that's pretty good. As manufacturing has evolved from brands owning the full production life cycle to orchestrating disparate manufacturing, distribution, and selling processes, supply chain have grown more complex, increasing demand for software solutions like ours. That is true as well. It's a very unique category. The way these guys have designed their suite, it's very, very, very unique and new. And the need to modernize the existing technology landscape with cloud-based modern solution. By the way, they are cloud native as well, Andy. And we are probably going to have some screenshot, and you have no idea how pretty they are. Now, this is another perspective overall from their architecture. So obviously they have the channel, which is very unique for these guys. I don't think we have seen the channel reference so far in any of the solutions that we have reviewed. So they really take that channel perspective. This is really designed for those automotive-centric verticals where you have to do a lot of collaboration with your partners. So you have the channel, you have the planning, you have global trade, logistics, and supply. That's why these guys are slightly more aligned towards manufacturers. Kinaxis is the solution that we have seen that was also aligned towards manufacturers. So for manufacturers, I guess you are going to have three. You are going to have E2open, Kinaxis, Infor, LN for the most part, Infor, LN, as well as GT Nexus or Infor Nexus. Those two combined, I guess. The other ones are not necessarily positioned for manufacturing. Blue Yonder, Manhattan, all of those are really retail solution. And by the way, for when you look at the supply chain planning, because of data, the industry matters a lot more. The micro vertical matters a lot more, because if you have supply chain planning data for retail, that's not going to work for manufacturing. For execution, it might be still okay. The solution that is designed for manufacturing, you might be able to use in retail, not for data, not for supply chain planning solutions in general. So they are very, very, very industry focused in general. But these are different parties, and this is really the multi-party network, right? So in their network, they have customers, they have retailers, they have resellers, they have distributors, and those three are different. Warehouses, you have customs, you have 3PLs, you have freight forwarders, you have transportation companies, you have co-packers. Can you believe this? Okay, internal, external manufacturers and suppliers. That is how strong the network is. They have pretty much everybody, literally. Okay, so now they have some more commentary here. This is coming from their financial statements. They are a publicly traded company and really big. So our network combines 4 distinct but connected ecosystems: demand, supply, logistics, and global trade. That's how they are segmenting it. And we estimate supports more than 420,000 enterprises, capturing 13.5 billion transaction data points. That's a big deal. That's a massive, massive AI. Okay, I don't think anybody's going to be as strong at AI as these guys just because they have that data. So they are talking about all of their partners who sell their goods primarily through online channels. So they are really into that e-commerce online sort of play. That's where they are going to be really strong in general. We estimate that we manage roughly $10 billion in incentives. Can you believe this? Incentives. $8 billion in incentives. And this is all going to be the trade incentives that manufacturers are offering to their distributors, or distributors are offering to their retailers. So that's a big deal. 900 million annual channel sales transaction. So this is a very channel focused solution. And again, this is going to be relevant only in certain verticals. And that's why this is very manufacturing focused solution, where you are going to have very collaborative supply chain. Traditionally, this market was captured by QADs of the world, IQMS of the world. So I think they are being disrupted for the most part. This is still very enterprise-centric solution where they are using SAP for ERP execution component, and this is going to be more of the planning collaboration component. Traditionally, you had QAD, IQMS. So I think the biggest threat, if anybody is going to have in the market, is probably going to be those vendors, because they don't have data. These guys have data. Infor at least has the network. So it's a very interesting mix right now. Here they are talking about finished good. We estimate that we facilitate over 23% of global ocean container bookings. More than 20%. Can you believe this? This is pretty much everything. That's a lot. More than $20 billion in transportation management spend. That's a lot. Okay, so they are saying we are a leading provider with a unique network of ecosystems and do not rely on third-party providers for network information. That may not be totally true. They have a lot of it, but they do have some relationships with the partner, especially if you look at their relationship with the real-time transportation visibility. They have network. They are relying on some partners. So yes, they are probably going to have 80%, 90% data. They are probably going to have the strongest data set out there, but they still rely on some partners. The other companies are going to be completely reliant on partners. They are not going to have any of that data. Now we have some more commentary here. So this is so we are talking about 7 different product families: channel shaping, demand sensing, business planning, global trade management, transportation and logistics, collaborative manufacturing. Okay, it has been there, but it wasn't as collaborative, either because of data or you didn't have access or whatever. Manufacturing was very rarely collaborative. The only systems that could pull off, and that's why we had systems like QAD and IQMS in the market. And the reason for that is because they were always targeted for those verticals. They did far better than any other vendors, such as SAP, Oracle, just because they had those capabilities, at least in the mid-market. Once you become larger, then, you probably had custom solution, but now these guys can do this out of the box. Channel shaping allows clients to optimize activity across retail, distribution, and online channels, which includes capabilities for partner selection. Partner selection is the whole new process. Aligning market incentives, managing on-shelf availability, tracking sell-through and inventory, as well as managing performance incentives. And again, I don't think companies did as much activity there. Now they are becoming thicker, and they need a lot more capabilities just because they are doing a lot more joint marketing, joint promotion, joint targeting. Demand sensing utilizes artificial intelligence and machine learning to forecast demand based on historical trends. So companies are becoming better there. Automotive always had problems with the forecasting, and they typically overproduced inventory. That was the industry-wide problem. So hopefully these guys are trying to alleviate some of that. Current sale-through dynamics, weather and other relevant factors, business planning, optimize global performance through scenario-based planning, which is common, and execution algorithm, balancing supply, demand, inventory, and financial targets. I don't have anything else here. Yeah, I think I'm good, Andy, unless you have any other comments. So here they are making one more comment, which is probably true as well. So here they are saying brand owners have transitioned from being manufacturers to orchestrators. And that's the change in the business model. This is happening as of today just because of all of these platforms. The business has changed substantially in last 5 to 8 years. So you are going to see a lot more of this. And that's why these platforms are so successful. That produce little but manage a vast network of outsourced trading partners that support their minute by minute operations across channel, manufacturing, supply, global trade, and logistics. And for the most part, this was driven by COVID, because COVID is when we had real supply chain issues, and then companies started realizing how broken their supply chains were. So now these platforms are doing wonderful job overall. Manufacturers are increasingly focused on utilizing disparate data to drive more efficient decision making. So that's nothing meaningful there as such. Yeah, they are saying many SCM technology solutions have historically had stronger capabilities within the region in which they were initially developed. That is true as well. Most of the supply chain insights, they were very regional focused. They were very mode focused. North America is the most developed. There were a lot of vendors who had North American insights, with Europe being served by a smaller number of SCM software solution. By the way, there is another trend that is happening. In fact, I mean, you have 3 or 4 different trends that are happening at the same time. Number one, e-invoicing, which is very new. Number 2 is sustainability. All of these things are driving, because now you need newer compliance reporting. Now you need far more collaboration overall, far more data, how that is being reported. And those capabilities now reside in platforms like this. Yes, some ERPs have this, but for the most part, the supply chain solutions are doing the heavy lifting for the communication. And that's a big deal in certain regions. If you go to Europe, and e-invoicing is a big deal, sustainability is a big deal. You have to have that capability. So yeah, they are talking about all of those COVID issues that we had. So the market is changing overall, Andy, and that's why these guys are really winning there. So
what size of a company would this product be targeting to?
Right now, it's all enterprise for the most part.
Sure.
Yeah,
like
they are really
1,000.
They have 90% of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they are really innovating right now. Mid market is probably, they're never going to have these capabilities for the most part. So they are really in that, SAP and Oracle play for the most part.
Yeah, I was going to say probably SAP.
Yeah. These are very expensive products.
I'm sure.
Very, very expensive. Okay.
Look at that. 300 of our clients' annual revenues over 10 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
They are probably going to be present in every single SAP and Oracle deal, especially the large ones. Yeah. And companies are probably installing these platforms first before they replace their ERP, because this has far more value because of the network, data, AI, forecasting accuracy. They have far more. These platforms have far more meaning than a real ERP, I guess.
They're very impressive that they're claiming the result was an overall 32% reduction in forecast errors during the pandemic. That's very impressive.
Yeah, I completely agree with them, and to be completely honest. And the reason for that is because the amount of data that they have and the AI that they can spin, I don't think anybody else can do that. If you're relying on your own data for the forecasting, regardless of how powerful the AI is, you are not going to get anywhere. For the most part, if you look at automotive, automotive always relied on these industry reports. For the most part, that data was pretty bad. That's how they forecasted their inventory, to be completely honest. So let's say if you look at the automotive supply chain, if you look at any of the automotive suppliers, they all relied on these industry reports and they forecasted based on that. But the initial data was hardly any good. So they always had to either overproduce. You had a lot of supply chain issues. So now these guys are really trying to fill that gap, I guess. I don't have anything else there. So now, and by the way, I mean, the reason why they are acquiring, I think that's what they are talking about in this particular slide, that they have a lot of white space there where they have the current install. So they are trying to expand in that. And that's why they are becoming big suite, and that's what everybody's doing in the market, especially in the supply chain space. They are trying to acquire as many companies as possible. So here they have acquired some really big names. They all were very, very, very big name. e2open, BluJay, Logistics, Ember Road, Intra. All of them were really big companies. Now, some of the features that, Andy, I don't know, Amici, you have been selling in manufacturing for a long time, and I don't know how much you are going to be able to relate with these features, to be completely honest, but they are very, very unique. The market is changing, so now these companies need these capabilities. So here, this is the channel data management, which personally, honestly speaking, even among supply chain solutions, we have not seen those. So there's a very, very new play that I don't think any platforms can support that. Even if you go to CRMs, they are not going to have all of this. So channel data management is a very unique thing. They are talking about captures any type of transactional data across the channel ecosystem, enables vendors and partners to monitor data transformation status and proactively resolve exceptions, accurately identifies companies, locations, and products, and enriches data using AI and proprietary repositories, validates alert in real time, and quarantines partner reported transactions that do not meet criteria such as feasible serial numbers, deal registration conditions, and inventory reconciliation. Now, there could be a thin line overall in terms of the architecture, I guess. In terms of what you want to host inside your ERP versus here. But when you look at the external collaboration, that multi-party collaboration that has to be inside supply chain platform. So the architecture is probably going to change. They are talking about enable flexible, configurable integration. That's all boilerplate, I guess. Now, transportation forecasting is a big deal. So here they are talking about forecasting of shipping loads by lane, mode, class, and day. This is at the day level. You are forecasting, how much capacity you are going to be needing, and you are planning based on that. That's a big deal, guys. Creation of daily inbound and outbound warehouse forecast to ensure adequate capacity. Then we have treatment for promotional and seasonal sales surges, time phase sourcing and scenario management for planning in advance of network changes. What if scenario management to evaluate alternative plans, collaborative platform for communication between parties. So again, transportation forecasting is a very interesting space in the supply chain platforms that we have reviewed so far. I think they would do some level of transportation forecasting. Typically, the experience is going to be very siloed. If you look at solutions like Trimble, they are probably going to contain a lot of this, but not everybody has as deep transportation planning forecasting capabilities that you are going to find in a broader solution like this. Then you have supply forecast collaboration. I think you will find some supply forecast collaboration in systems such as your Blue Yonder, Manhattan, but they might not be as strong, on the transportation side of things. Now, you are going to find this into your Infor Nexus as well. Transportation, you might not find. Andy, comment?
No, I completely agree.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have time series view of component forecast, upsides and commitment for suppliers and contract manufacturers. They have shared source of truth for all parties that increases transparency in trust between partners. So when they talk about shared source of truth, they are talking about these vendors collaborating together. Okay, it's not your internal source of truth, which is generally prevalent in your ERP space. This is when multiple trading partners are collaborating together, which is a very different concept. Dynamic alerts for demand supply mismatches between buyer and suppliers. That's a big deal, guys. Again, we are talking industry here as opposed to talking about four walls of your supply chain. Very, very different, capabilities. Advanced visibility into large upside orders, improved sales and operations planning, SNOP, which is sort of common. Again, you are going to find this in Connexus. You are probably going to find this in Infor Nexus. But they are probably going to be short in the transportation side of things.
Right.
Any comment?
No, I was going to say absolutely correct.
Okay, now we have parcel. So some platforms were really designed for parcel. They didn't have anything else. These guys have parcel, last mile, proof of delivery, all of that, along with everything else. So here now global parcel is changing as well. So here they are talking about global business rules within parcel workflows for various types of shippers, including B2C, B2B, logistics service providers, and third-party logistics providers. In fact, ERP systems did not do a good job of proof of delivery, and now proof of delivery is part of this as well. So anything related to last mile is going to be part of these platforms. So access to largest carrier network integrated with label, manifesting, and track and trace operations. So here we are talking about that parcel workflow just because they acquired that company. That's how they got the parcel capabilities. Shipping tools to allow for warehouse, distribution center, ship from a store, ship from vendor, 3PL, and channel partner shipping. Can you believe this? These things get very, very, very complex in general when you talk about that omni-channel perspective. When you talk about omni-channel collaboration, they get very complex. Now, we have some more. Andy, how many comments are you going to have? We have 2 minutes right now in the session.
Not too many.
Not too many. Okay, we'll take 10 minutes. Let's cover this, and then we'll probably move to the comments, I guess. So then we have the distribution planning. Distribution planning is, again, I don't know where you would keep that, to be completely honest. So here we are talking about inventory target policies. We are talking about sourcing decisions, alternate, modes of transport. Typically that resided inside your TMS. So, things are coming together, I guess. Visibility into constraints such as warehouse storage, loading, and handling capacities. Facility calendars, can you believe this? Okay, again, that is very warehouse management centric functionality. Lead times, lot sizes, product shelf life, demand prioritization, allocation. Allocation is very subjective as well. And then what else?
So when it says loading and handling capacities, is that within the warehouse or is that within the containers?
Both. So they are going to do everything. They are literally looking at everything end to end, which is very different. This is distribution planning. So this is most likely going to be more from the warehouse perspective.
Right.
But they have everything.
The transportation management, so it's going to go all the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's where their power is, to be completely honest. Now, allocation and order promising could be very different. I mean, this is very OMS centric functionality. So they are talking about powerful and flexible set and allocation strategies. They are talking about internal and external material supply, transportation availability, manufacturing capacity, then including new and end of life products. That planning itself is very deep in general. Then we are talking about cannibalization. What is that? Super session or suppression? I don't know. Super session, is that a concept as well?
Session.
That's very interesting, right? But cannibalization planning is a big deal in supply chain. Okay, pricing.
Super session would be to do with the life cycle of a product and then the evolution of a new one replacing it.
Yeah, my take on this would be opposite of cannibalization, I guess. Right?
The word cannibalization, I got to be honest, makes me laugh a little bit, but
but that's a real deal in marketing. Yeah, it's a real cannibalization. Somebody is eating somebody.
Somebody's eating somebody else.
Yeah, that's what is happening here, Andy. And you need to plan for that. How many times are you going to be eaten, I guess? Okay, consensus planning capabilities to synchronize operational and strategic business function within the SNOP process. Attach rate planning to forecast dependent component demand for configured products. Can you believe this? Okay, so again, this is very, very deep and very broad. So I think we'll open for comments, Andy. I know we are tight on time. We'll probably do.
I'll tell you what. This system is so mind-blowing. It's hard to make any comments at all. But what I wanted to say is I'm not sure how many people are on the call today or how many we usually have or how many people watch the recordings. But wow, the amount of information that this man to my left or right or whatever he is able to provide for the public. The people that are not attending these sessions are really missing out.
Yeah, and I think they are watching on YouTube, Andy. We are definitely open out in public, and that's the beauty of these sessions.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you so much. I mean, obviously, anytime we have
I learned so much. It's just,
I learned so much. I mean, it's not that, I knew all of this. It's all
you're humble. Well, that's the difference.
It's part of research and learning. It's for everyone, I guess, Andy. So again, do you have any more comments before we wrap?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andy, for your time, and thank you so much, everybody, for dialing in. If you dialed for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. I know, Andy, you have comments, so you finish off, and then I'll wrap.
Every session is riveting. Every session is fun. You all should be watching this.
Amazing page. Thank you so much,
What a
Andy.
great episode. What a great venue this is.
It indeed is. It's supposed to be educational, guys. That's what we are trying to do. So again, if you want some more education, make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight.